Holy shit. Well, hi there, Internet. My name's Court, and you've got courtside seats for my review of Chris Nolan's brand new war epic, Dunkirk. Allied soldiers from Belgium, the British Empire, and France are surrounded by the German army and evacuated during a fierce battle in World War II. So that's the basic premise of the movie. There are 400,000 soldiers sort of located on this beach in this town in France. And they're right across the channel from England, like to the point where they can almost see it. I think it's like 27 miles or something. But they can't get anywhere. They don't have the ships, and they're completely surrounded by the German army, who are dropping leaflets on them saying, "We're surrounding you," and messing with their heads. And the film is about the rescue mission. This is a true story, and the film is about a rescue mission to try and get them out of there. Because 400,000 troops, like that's a lot of troops. Now, the first thing I want to say about this movie is it's spectacular. And I mean that in the dictionary definition of the word. It is absolute spectacle all the way through. Not everybody has the ability to see this movie in IMAX, but if you do have that option, and like real IMAX, that's what you want to do. The cinematographer, I believe his name is Hoyt van Hoytema. He shot, over 70% of the movie is shot in IMAX, and most of it is done handheld, which is like absolutely insane. But the scope of this film, the size of just the picture and the dogfights and the ships and the number of extras and all that, it's absolutely astounding. In a lot of ways, it is a pretty scary movie. I mean, it's not a horror film, unless you're talking the horrors of war, and then I guess it is. It's frightening. The first time you see German fighter planes coming out of the sky, to me it looked like sharks swimming towards you out of the deep, and it was frightening. Watching this movie, it's very easy to understand like how people get shell shock and PTSD and all of that kind of stuff. The film is punishingly intense. I mean that in a good way, but it is absolutely unrelenting. A lot of war movies, like Saving Private Ryan, was an incredibly intense war film, but it also had quieter moments of just the soldiers being buds or whatever. This movie has none of that. This movie does not let up at any moment. And it's actually interesting to note, it's Christopher Nolan's shortest film since his very first movie, an independent movie he did called Following. And that's a really good thing here, because I don't think you could sustain that level of intensity for 2.5 hours. Like, you would be completely exhausting the audience. I was like emotionally drained by the end of this flick. There's very, very little dialogue in this movie, and there's very little character development. And Chris Nolan has said, you know, he did this purposefully. You know, in war, you don't necessarily get to know the people around you. They're just people who you know are on your side, but that's pretty much all you get. And this film is really more about the actual event that took place. It wasn't about, you know, adding in a love story like Pearl Harbor or anything like that. It didn't need to be there. That wasn't the story needing to be told. Chris Nolan has even called this his most experimental film, and it is that. And I understand why he did what he did, and in some ways it really worked for me, and in some ways it didn't, but we'll get back to that. The acting in this movie is really very solid, but it's, again, with so little dialogue, it's kind of hard to tell at times. I mean, actors can do a lot with their body, but the voice is like a major part of an acting performance. Kenneth Branagh plays like a colonel or a general or something. He's very good. He has very little screen time, but he is very good. Mark Rylance and Cillian Murphy share the screen. And when I say like there's very little character, Cillian Murphy is one of the bigger names in this film, and he's credited as Shivering Soldier. But they share one storyline where Mark Rylance is somebody, a civilian from England, who is taking his own private boat over to Dunkirk to pick up as many soldiers as he can. And he ends up picking up Cillian Murphy, and they're very good together. Now we gotta talk about Harry Styles. Yes, that Harry Styles from One Direction. I've never listened to One Direction, and I don't plan to start anytime soon. Christopher Nolan has compared his casting of Harry Styles to his casting of Heath Ledger as the Joker, and while I do think that's maybe going a little bit far, Harry Styles is good. Dude does a good job. I was impressed. And let's talk about Tom Hardy. Now, Tom Hardy's already been in a couple of Chris Nolan movies. He was in Inception, where we could understand him, and he was in The Dark Knight Rises, where we could not. He plays a British fighter pilot. His story is my favorite part of the film. But being a fighter pilot, he does have a mask on, and we do get some of the same problems we had with Bane. He's a little Baney, and he's a little hard to understand at times. Luckily, the man has such intense eyes that, you know, he can do a lot with that, but still, it's just like, throughout the movie, it's kind of like, yo, Tom Hardy, what are you trying to do to that German fighter plane over there? Crashing this plane with no survivors. But whatever, I love Tom Hardy, so it was good. Now, this film Like a lot of Chris Nolan films, he really likes to utilize the non-linear storytelling. Nolan linear? Non-Nolan? And while he does set it up at the beginning of the movie, I'm not going to explain how, but he does set up that it is going to be non-linear early in the film in kind of a subtle way. It was somewhere into the third act where I really started cluing in and going, oh, that's what that meant. Okay, I get it now. And I've talked to other people and they found the same thing, so I think it was probably designed that way. Nolan likes to keep us guessing. Hans Zimmer's score in this movie is also really good. Hans Zimmer has worked with Nolan for a long time. He did all the Batman movies, he did Inception. Batman Begins might have been the first thing he did with Nolan, but he's done everything with Nolan since. Interstellar. And much like the film itself, the score is insanely intense and unrelenting. And it's such a cool little idea. And I love Hans Zimmer because he's such a creative guy when it comes to these little things. But a lot of the rhythm in the music, in the score, is based around the sound of a ticking watch, because the whole idea of this movie is like time is running out. And so all of the pieces of music, or most of them, are and I found out yesterday, I was reading up on this movie on IMDb, and apparently he actually used Christopher Nolan's own pocket watch to record that, because of course Christopher Nolan has a pocket watch. I also want to talk about Seafoam. There are a lot of shots of Seafoam in this movie, and I gotta be honest, I don't like it. I don't like the Seafoam. I don't trust the way it moves. So I am a Nolan fanboy through and through, and I have to say, while I did really enjoy this film, and I didn't love it as much as I was hoping to or thinking that I would. And I think part of that comes down to a couple of the choices that Chris Nolan made. Like having such little dialogue and having such little character development. Again, I totally get what he was going for, and I think it was a very creative idea, and I think it was a very brave idea. I think for me and my sensibilities, it was a little bit of a detriment to the film. But don't get me wrong, I still really, really enjoyed this movie. Now, I don't have a proprietary rating system as yet, so I'm just trying to figure out what I'm going to give Dunkirk, and I think I'm going to give Dunkirk a... out of 10. So have you guys seen Dunkirk? What did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What's your favorite Christopher Nolan movie, and what would you love to see him do next? Are you psyched for him to do a Bond movie? Because people are talking like that might happen. Whatever your thoughts, hit the comments below and let's discuss. If you enjoyed this review, please smash that like button and share this video if you really enjoyed it. And if you'd like to subscribe to this channel, you can do so by clicking the Courtshake logo at the bottom right of your screen. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.